sleeping in time won't lose. You can't win, 'cause time can't lose.
Next, we have the film that got me into horror movies, Halloween. A man who killed his older sister as a kid escapes from a mental asylum and terrorizes a small town in Illinois on Halloween night, and one teenage girl becomes his target. What I love about this movie is that it has such a simple plot that is executed so well. Its plot is basically a mass killer walking around and killing teenagers, but its eerie atmosphere, subtle build-up, and dark imagery give it a unique look. Unlike most horror movies that use gallons of blood, this film uses little, but the deaths still come off as painful and shocking. Another thing I love is the killer, Michael Myers. He's huge, quiet, moves slowly, and is indestructible. He comes off as scary because he's the kind of guy you fear to run into while you're alone at night. Also, I have to give it to a young Jamie Lee Curtis playing Laurie Strode, who fights back against Michael and shows to be strong and defensive. Donald Pleasence is also great as Dr. Loomis, Michael's doctor. He's determined to stop Michael as he feels he's the embodiment of evil. His monologues about Michael are well written, as they build the character up as a devilish entity that will keep killing if he isn't stopped. Finally, this movie is a perfect example of a movie that didn't need a lot of money to be a work of art. With how well this film is made, you seem to forget that it was made dirt cheap. That meant that the crew had to put a little more effort into making the movie come out as something special, and their talent shines through in the final product. I'm a sucker for independent movies because they show to have more appreciation and heart put into them than most Hollywood movies, and this movie is a perfect example of that. Halloween is a movie that not only shows how amazing horror films can be, but also how well movies can be made with the smallest budgets. I'm a huge fan of kung fu movies. Unlike a lot of people, I don't get bored with them. I can watch martial art masters fight each other all day and not even blink. I also love how a lot of kung fu movies also double as comedy movies, and they blend both action and laughs with masterful work. However, the martial artist I had the most fun with is Jackie Chan, and his movie that I believe is his best work is Drunken Master 2. Known in the US as Legend of the Drunken Master, Jackie plays the legendary Chinese hero Wong Fei Hung, who's torn between having to obey his father's pacifist beliefs and protecting his mother from a group of thieves. Having seen many Jackie Chan movies, one thing I've noticed is that he's always topping himself when it comes to the level of action in each of his movies. I feel that this film has Jackie's best fights in his whole career. Each fight scene is entertaining, and they only get better as the film continues. From the very first fight at the train station to the final fight at the factory, it's an unforgivable barrage of flying fists and kicks. Also, as typical with Jackie's movies, this film makes me laugh as much as it does knock me out. There's a reason this film has Drunken Master in the title. In it, Wong Fei Hung gets drunk in order to make his martial arts skills increase, but it also causes him to goof off in hilarious ways. Of all the martial arts movies I've seen, Drunken Master 2 stands out as the best one in my eyes. It's got the highest quality of hand-to-hand combat that I've ever seen, and it shows no signs of slowing down. In my mind, it has yet to be topped, and I highly doubt that any other kung fu movie will knock it off of its throne. As you know, I love cartoons. I'm just so fascinated by a medium that allows you to do whatever your mind can come up with. Filmmaking is also a medium that allows you to do such things, and so I'm just as fascinated when I find movies that borrow the elements that make cartoons so great. One example of a live-action cartoon I can think of is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. In medieval England, King Arthur gathers several knights to join him on a quest for the Holy Grail, but the journey doesn't go as smoothly as they hope it would. This movie was my introduction to Monty Python, and forever changed how I saw humor. Monty Python specializes in how casual the characters stay despite all the wackiness that goes on around them. They see a man-eating rabbit, a knight that refuses to give up, and a giant monster has just obstacles to go through to accomplish their quest. However, this movie does feel like a collage of comedic scenes that are glued together by a basic plot, but I'm not complaining, especially when those scenes cause me to laugh hysterically. One of the hardest questions I can ever be asked is what my favorite scene from this movie is. From the opening credits all the way to the abrupt ending, I love this movie all the way through, and there's not one scene I can watch by itself. I also admire the Python members who each play a variety of roles while still maintaining to give each character they play its own distinct personality and comedic traits. This is also one of those movies I quote the most. I find myself shouting, "Run away!" while I'm doing casual things. Finally, this movie made me fall in love with British humor. While it was a little hard for me to understand it at first, I realized why I wasn't getting it. You're not supposed to get it. British humor is a no-holds-barred attack of wacky situations and characters that manage to fit in with the stories. That's what this movie is. A wacky scene after wacky scene that all fit together to lampoon the legend of King Arthur. It's a movie that laughs being serious in the face and just has fun with itself, transporting me into a world where the things that I find funny are just common occurrences. As I've said, I love fantasy. One filmmaker that pioneered fantasy movies is Jim Henson. The amount of imagination he had was unbelievable, and I believe we lost him too soon. I really wanted to see what else he had in that creative mind of his, but I'm more than happy with the two fantasy movies he's left us. One is The Dark Crystal, and the other is the next movie on the list, Labyrinth. A young Jennifer Connelly plays a teenage girl who is unhappy that she has to look after her baby brother, so she wishes that the Goblin King would come and take him away. However, the Goblin King, played by David Bowie, shows up and takes the baby brother away. Now, the girl has limited amount of time to make it through the Goblin King's labyrinth in order to get her brother back. This is a movie I think of when I have fantasy on my mind. The girl enters an imaginative world where she runs into dangerous challenges, and she meets some colorful friends along her journey. Upon rewatching this film, I still have a hard time guessing what's coming next. The puppeteering is also top-notch. I believe that there are living, breathing creatures in this movie, and that's all thanks to the fantastic work of Jim Henson's team. And, since David Bowie is in this movie, he has a few opportunities to show why he's one of my favorite rockers. No matter how hard I try, I can't get Magic Dance out of my head. Finally, this movie just has a certain charm to it. It feels like the kind of story a child would come up with while he or she is playing with toys. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a kid like that. I used to make my toys go on quests similar to the kind that Jennifer Connelly goes on in this movie. Watching this movie takes me back to a time when the only thing I had to worry about was bedtime coming before I could finish my story. Overall, Labyrinth is a wondrous movie that has a cheeky tone to it, but that only adds to how much fun it really is. Alright, before I move on, I got to do this. Say it with me, folks. You remind me of a babe. The babe with the power. The power of voodoo. You do. Remind me of the babe. As you know, I got into anime early last year. I was enjoying the anime series that I was getting into, but I wanted to give the anime movies a try, specifically the ones of Hayao Miyazaki. Beforehand, I saw Howl's Moving Castle several years before, and I wanted to see what else he's done. Well, when I was browsing through Amazon one day, I stumbled upon this movie and decided to try it out. What it led to is a Saturday that made me look at animation and movies in a whole new way. I was forever changed by Princess Mononoke. A young man named Ashitaki, while on a journey to find a cure for a wound that he got from a dark spirit called a Tartarigami, gets caught up in a war between forest spirits and a mining community. This leads to him meeting San, the daughter of the wolf spirit, who's trying to stop Lady Ibushi from killing the forest spirit. This is the animated equivalent to Seven Samurai. It has an epic feel to it that just gets me caught up in everything that goes on. Miyazaki also creates wondrous creatures that have never been seen on film, and haven't been seen since. That's what I look forward to when it comes to movies. I don't want to see the same things over and over again. I want to see what filmmakers' imaginations are made of, and Miyazaki is one who has imagination. While this movie is full of imaginative creatures and lots of well-animated action, the characters are complex enough to keep me interested in the whole film. San is at first ruthless and wanting to kill Ibushi, but Ashitaki teaches her that killing isn't always the right way. Finally, this film never slows down despite being over 2 hours long. It's a non-stop thrill ride from start to finish. Overall, Princess Mononoke is an animated film like no other. It's a grand scale film that reminds me that nature is full of magic and wonder. As big as a movie fan I am, there are times when classic films bore me. It hurts me to admit that, but sometimes beloved films just don't do much for me. However, there is one film I love so much that it surprised me. It's a film that only the one and only Stanley Kubrick could put on screen, 2001: A Space Odyssey. In the not-so-distant future, humanity discovers an object called the Monolith, and a mission starts up to go after it. This is one of the hardest films to talk about because it's just one of those movies that has to be watched, but I'll try my best. Anyway, what I love about it is that it's a Kubrick movie, and being one of my favorite directors, I'll watch any movie he made. However, this one is my favorite because I love visual movies, and this is a visual movie. The cinematography is the best that Kubrick has ever put on screen. I actually believe that the future this movie establishes can actually exist. Also, a lot of people tend to hate this movie because it's slow-paced and it's almost 3 hours long. While I understand the reasoning, I actually love that this movie takes its time. It's supposed to give the illusion that the characters are in space, and I actually believe that they are. While most of the movie involves the astronauts doing casual things, I love seeing what astronauts do when they're on missions. Another aspect of this film that's worth mentioning is Hal 9000, one of the greatest characters in film history. He's a perfect example of artificial intelligence gone bad, as he is determined at completing the mission, even if it means killing the crew of the ship. He's also a master at deception, as you can never tell if he's lying or telling the truth. I'll admit, the ending of this film is rather confusing and up for debate, and I'll have to watch the film again in order to come up with my own conclusion. But anyway, 2001: A Space Odyssey shows a dark look at what the future holds, and showers my eyes with beautiful visuals along the way. As you know, I grew up loving monster movies. As a kid, I would find as many monster movies at the video store that I could, and one of those movies was King Kong. A film crew is making a voyage to a mysterious island where a monster is said to live. When they get there, the leading female is kidnapped by the natives and is set to be sacrificed to the monster, who ends up being real. Now, the crew must journey through the prehistoric forests of the island in order to save the woman. Before I saw this movie, I only knew about King Kong from the movie King Kong vs. Godzilla, and I had no idea he had his own film. So, though I am still a huge Godzilla fan, I can appreciate King Kong as well. This film is one of the innovations of special effects. So many film techniques had to be invented in order to make this film work, and they are pulled off well. While some of them don't look as good compared to modern times, I have to admire the work of Willis O'Brien for using the only resources he had to make his vision come to life. And, like fantasy movies, adventure movies deal with characters traveling out of their comfort zones into worlds that are full of fantastic obstacles to overcome, and this film is a great example of an adventure movie. It takes a little while for the crew to get to the island, but once they get there, I have my seatbelt strapped in, and I'm ready for a wild ride. Each scene is full of thrills and excitement, as there are several dinosaurs that get in Kong's way, but he shows them who's the king. Overall, King Kong is a wondrous movie that impresses me from a filmmaking standpoint, but entertains the inner child in me who loves traveling to exotic lands and seeing monsters run wild and cause havoc. We move on to one stop-motion animated movie to another. This is yet another film that I found at my local video store as a child. It introduced me to a whole new filmmaker, Ray Harryhausen, who I soon discovered as a child disguised as an adult. He loves fantasy and adventure just as much as me, and I feel The Seven Voyages of Sinbad is his best adventure of all. Arabian fantasy hero Sinbad must go on a quest to a mysterious island to gather the ingredients for a potion to give to his fiancée, who has been stricken by a sorcerer's spell. As much as I love Ray Harryhausen's other films, I just can't ignore the childhood nostalgia I have for this movie. This is one movie that I would constantly watch, enjoying it more each time. This movie doesn't waste any time, and within the first 10 minutes, Sinbad's crew runs into a giant cyclops, which hooks me in every time. This film only gets bigger and better as Sinbad and his crew eventually run into several other monsters. Aside from the monsters, the characters are the kind you normally see in stories like this. You have the brave hero who stands up to every challenge that gets in his way. You have the beautiful love interest who the hero is trying to save. Then you have the dastardly villain who is trying to get his way. While these characters are done a lot, I don't mind because I love movies like this, so I don't get bored seeing the same elements from them. The music by Bernard Herrmann is also a highlight, as it's got a fantastic Arabian vibe to it. And of course, Ray Harryhausen's stop motion work is the real star of the film. This was the first film he did in color, and he takes full advantage of it. His creatures are bright, colorful, and detailed to make them look as if they're actually there with the actors. Overall, The Seven Voyages of Sinbad reminds me of why I love movies so much. It's a fantastic adventure that got me into Arabian culture, and I feel like a kid again every time I watch it. We now move on to yet another Beatles movie. The Beatles did something interesting and agreed for an animated movie to be made based off their music. The result is a surreal adventure movie that shows exactly what animation can do, Yellow Submarine. When a peaceful world of Pepperland is attacked by a group of blue meanies, a citizen escapes and seeks the help of the Beatles. So, they set sail on a trippy voyage to Pepperland in order to save it from the hateful meanies. The first time I watched this movie was a Friday night after I came home from work. I was kinda beat and just wanted to watch a movie before I went to bed. So, I put this movie in, and I was amazed. This movie is full of so many surreal visuals that show no signs of slowing down. However, being used to the trippy nature of the Beatles' music, I not only handle the surreal images, I'm impressed by them. You see things that you'd never expect to see, and you question whether or not you're on something. Speaking of the music, since this is a Beatles movie, it makes great use of their songs. Unlike the music just being dropped into the movie like in other Beatles films, the songs actually have to do with the plot as they match most of the visuals on screen, and they help get the Fab Four out of the situations they get caught up in. Also, the Beatles were involved with this film, sans for the small cameo at the end, so the crew had to hire voice actors to voice the animated counterparts of the boys from Liverpool. However, the voice actors do such great jobs that I forget the characters aren't played by the actual Beatles. Finally, this movie has an overall message of peace and love that I'm all for. Being a pacifist, it always warms my heart to see movies that promote tolerance of our fellow men. Overall, Yellow Submarine is a fantastic voyage full of imagination and fun that no other film can even wish to top. This is yet another film that goes back to my childhood, and it's yet another monster movie. This is a unique movie that takes a different approach to the monster movie genre, and that film is Gremlins. A young man is given a Chinese animal called a Mogwai for Christmas, but there are certain rules that he has to follow in order to keep it. Of course, the rules are accidentally broken, and it leads to his little town being taken over by a group of green monsters who just want a party. This is a film that just wants to be just that, a film. It doesn't want to convey any message to us. It doesn't want to be the next Citizen Kane, and it's not trying to win any Oscars. It just wants to be a fun-filled movie with lots of thrills and laughs, and I think it more than succeeds. It's got a charm to it that makes it worth watching several times, and each time gets better than the last. From a technical standpoint, the effects are masterful. The Mogwais and Gremlins look so realistic that I feel like I could reach into the TV and pet them. It's such a shame that since computers have taken over the film industry, animatronics have been phased out. But watching this movie makes me wish they would make a comeback, as I think they look so much better than anything a computer could create. Also, one thing I don't like about movies is cute moments that are forced into them. However, this movie does have some cute moments, but they never feel shoved in, and are actually believable. I always giggle at the end when Gizmo says, "Bye, Billy." I also have to give it to the great Frank Welker for voicing the leader of the Gremlins, Stripe. That man has an iron throat. There's also the music by Jerry Goldsmith, with one of the most recognizable film scores ever. Finally, I just love the Gremlins as characters because they're so different from every other movie monster. They don't eat people or anything like that. They just want to have fun, and they attack anyone who gets in their way. So, Gremlins is a cartoony movie that shows us that monsters are just like us, hyperactive folks who are just looking for a good time and cause trouble along our way.